So I played Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, and it might be the very best piece of DLC I've ever played. When I think of the best DLC ever, I think the Mass Effect expansions, Fallout 3 in New Vegas, The Witcher 3, BioShock Infinite, Borderlands 2, The Last of Us. What makes really good DLC to me is something that doesn't just extend the experience I got from the main game, it elevates it. It adds something so good that you can't separate the main game from the DLC. Once it's out, it's part of that game's DNA forever. And if you ever replay the game, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna play the DLC too. This is exactly what AC Island does for me. This is Game of the Year quality content for a Game of the Year quality game. And while you can look at this and say it's just more Ghost, I do think you're missing something if you don't play this. Director's Cut feels like essential content for one of the best open world video games of this generation. Usually when I play DLC, it's after a couple months of not playing the main game. It's an excuse to dive back in, and if it's for a good game, it reminds me just how great that main game was. But that's not what happened with Ghost for me, because this is a game I've been coming back to pretty regularly. It's my happy place game. I just boot it up every week and ride around so I can exist in this world as the Ghost. However, Icky is so good that I still got hit with those moments where I'm like, holy shit, this game is amazing. The combat, the world, and the story. Director's Cut is so strong in every phase that it's hard for me to point out any one way it doesn't impress me. It starts off with Jin fighting waves of the Eagle tribe, and he realizes these are the new bad guys, the new threat after defeating the Khan in the main game. He also has a strong connection to Iki that we really don't fully understand yet, but we learn that his father died there, so it's a compelling enough reason for him to go. This is where I got back into the raw, intense power of this combat. There's just a rhythm here that feels so satisfying. It makes me feel like I'm Neo breathing in and out, like bending the matrix around me. Cycling between stances, picking off archers in the back line, pulling off a perfect parry or a perfect, dodge. This combat makes me want to join the Holy Convent of the Ghost because it is sacred and it is holy. This is where Jin meets the Shaman, which is the new enemy type, and these guys sing and dance in place, and their song buffs all of the enemies on the field, so it adds a sort of prioritization to group combat. I always targeted these guys first because I play on hard and you just can't muscle through them. It makes fights much more difficult if you don't take them out immediately. Adding another layer to the tic-tac-toe design of this system, yeah, it makes sense and it works. You also run into these enemies who force you to cycle through water, stone, and shield stances. I especially love these because it ramps up the difficulty and it forces me to adapt in pretty much every single fight. In fact, the difficulty on Iki represents kind of a sweet spot for me. After I finished the main game, I felt a little too powerful, but also the highest difficulty felt a little insane. So this DLC knocks you down a few pegs in all the right ways. Once you make it to Iki, man, if you thought the main game was pretty, walking out onto the beaches of this island might just convince you otherwise. Iki, it washes over you. It's almost meditative. I wouldn't be shocked if doctors prescribed Director's Cut in place of talk therapy because it feels medicinal to walk through this place. There are some absolutely jaw-droppingly gorgeous moments throughout this DLC. Once they start, they do not stop. Exploring the Raider hideout, kind of situated in this cliffside. Yeah, the battlefield where Jin's father fought, like seeing the current version of that. The pink sunsets that seem to appear out of nowhere constantly. The rain that showers over the island for like half the runtime. I don't remember a video game outside of The Last of Us Part 2 where I actually liked seeing rain. The same can be said for the nighttime. When these open world games have 24-hour day-night cycles, I'll be honest, most of the time the night is just dull. Not in Ghost. The way the moonlight splashes over the terrain and impacts the fog, it's just special. Riding your horse through Iki feels great because of the new haptic features. And I know these seem gimmicky, but on my PS5, I do love feeling Kaze's hooves strike the ground with every gallop. It adds an element that sounds like marketing speak when you talk about it, but yeah, it totally works. Iki feels like magic in and out of set pieces, but it really flexes during its story moments. When you're riding into battle and your surroundings are so pretty that you want to put the controller down and stare. I don't know, man. Whatever sage wisdom Sucker Punch gained from directing the art in Ghost, they turned that up to 11 with Iki. This world is absurdly pretty. When you first get to the island, Jin pulls a classic samurai honor move and tries to take the Eagle tribe head on. Of course, he gets captured and then poisoned by the big new baddie, the Eagle. She's a convincing villain, but it takes a while for you to see why. Her poison has this Scarecrow in Arkham Asylum effect on Jin, where she kind of whispers in your ears at random points, twisting every little thing you do into an attack on Jin's psyche. She explains that this poison is supposed to make you confront your demons so that you can conquer them and then rise up. Obviously insane. Later, we find out the poison was meant to groom Jin into becoming one of those dancing shamans, which, you know, part of me wanted to see that because who wouldn't want to see Jin doing this? The poison gets more and more intense as the story goes on, and seeing the way she continues to manipulate Jin is genuinely intriguing. I thought I'd get annoyed by this because the poison kicks in at random times, but there's so many unique prompts for it that when they pop up, I was excited to see what she would say this time. It also causes Jin to hallucinate, so you're seeing things that aren't really there during missions, but also in the open world. And there are some hard-hitting moments here, like coming across this hat that appears like it belongs to Ryozu. You also find this beheaded body, and Jin imagines that it's Taka's head with Yuna sitting there beside him. For me, these callbacks to the main game are great, but they really do convince me that Jin is facing some serious psychological trauma, a very real conflict. And it makes the Eagle more of a threat than she would have been otherwise if she was just this rando who shows up and starts killing people. A fear I always have with DLC is that it gives you the same exact activities that you had in the main game. Ghost is a huge game already, and as great as seeing Jin's butt for the 15th time would have been, that would have been disappointing for me. Iki does give you a few more haikus and even a couple bamboo strikes, which was funny to me, but overall, I was so happy to see most of the open world activities are new. Animal sanctuaries are where Jin sits down to play the flute, and he basically turns into a Disney princess. You get this motion control minigame, which is fun, and also like the haptics. Again, you can feel the feedback of the flute. It actually made me feel like I was holding a flute. But what I really appreciated here is what Jin said. He reflects on his relationship with his mother in these flute minigames. You learn that she taught him how to play, and you get a bunch of stories about the songs he learned as a kid, and makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. It's just lovely. And they also reward you with some interesting charms, like the cat charm, which lets you throw kunai in chain assassinations, which of course, I abused the hell out of. Really, all of these charms felt unique. They fell into that sweet spot of quirky and fun, knowing that this is DLC and we've already seen a million charms. The other charm activity, the archery challenge, probably my least favorite of the new ones, but hey, it's still new and fun. The activity that made the most impact on me, though, was Jin's memories. You'll find flags around the island where Jin remembers what Iki was like years ago when his father invaded. Instead of being a cutscene, it puts you in the shoes of Jin. You control him and you relive those memories, and they do a great job of exploring every site of the war. They give context to not only Jin's perspective, but also the reality of what really happened here. You learn that Dad wasn't quite the mythic hero he's built up to be in the main game, especially to Jin. But you also see the quieter moments where his father almost tells him how proud he is of him. Am I gonna cry in this video, dude? Some of these moments play out like nightmares, and they juxtapose against the Eagle's poison dreams so well. It's a really clever way of filling in the gaps of Jin's character development while also making it relevant to the main conflict in the DLC. When I look at all of the memories as a whole, they just give you incredible pieces of insight about Jin, you know, how he grasps with losing his dad, which is something we don't see enough of in the main game. Once you find all of these, you unlock one final memory for Jin after his dad dies. You walk around and collect his father's effects and leave Iki for good, but first, you get to see him work on a song that he wrote for his dad. And then back in present day, Jin plays it. He completes the song, and now I'm crying in a video. A lot of these activities have some sort of narrative relevance that strikes deep. This is powerful stuff. The same can be said for some of the tales of Iki and especially the mythic tales. There's a lot of content here, so I won't go through all of it, but a highlight for me was running into Kenji from the main game. He calls himself the Ghost of Iki in the expansion, and you learn that he's in debt to some pirates, so you have to help him, and pretty much along the way, Kenji learns to be less selfish. You get genuine character development for a guy that didn't do much for me in the main game, I'll be honest, but this was a nice surprise. Okay, the Black Hand of Riku mythic tale, guys, this was pure magic. You learn of this pirate legend of Iki, and it leads you to follow this cosmic trail in the ocean. Then you wander upon this cave. It plays out almost like a horror game where you light the torches to continue. And then at the end, you find Riku, the pirate legend. He's actually still alive, but he's blind and basically insane. Then, of course, you end up dueling him, surrounded by a crowd of monkeys with these cosmic swirls in the pool below. This is such a cool, unforgettable moment. But even cooler is the freaking armor that you get from this guy. The Sarugami armor removes regular parry and unlocks the perfect parry combo. So it almost feels like a separate difficulty mode that rewards you for timing, for precision, and it's amazing. I'm so glad I did this in the first few hours because it changed my experience for the DLC. Everything after that felt so much better in combat that I already loved. Plus, look at this armor set. I mean, I know it's huge and ridiculous, but it looks amazing. I think this DLC is powerful in all phases, but narratively, it feels like sucker punched me in the feels. This is no errand that Jin is running. This is not vacation DLC. This feels like a journey he has to take. He goes to Iki to protect Tsushima, but ultimately, it's to confront his inner guilt. The eagle's poison ends up showing Jin just how heavy his father's death really weighs on him. There's so many angles that we, the player, did not really know about. And while that's true for every character in every video game, you know, you only see the story that the dev chooses to tell, the way Iki shows me this story is so important to Jin. The history of Iki is bloodstained by his father's assaults. He's literally called the Butcher of Iki by people who live here. And that's why Jin has to pretend to be someone else for the first half of the DLC. We haven't even talked about him yet, but this is why a character like Tenzo is so great. He's hesitant when they first meet because Jin is a samurai, and samurai literally butchered people on Iki. But he learns he's actually talking to the son of the butcher. It hits hard. But when you learn Tenzo is the very one Jin watched kill his father, when you learn he'd been keeping this from Jin from the very moment he learned his identity, that hits even harder. This moment right here, guys, this got me. I was screaming at the screen. It elicited a physical reaction out of me. I was reaching out my hand and pleading for Jin not to kill this guy. Don't kill this guy. I'm not the most expressive guy in the world a lot of the time, but yeah, this really got to me. I mean, holy shit. Iki's story made me realize that, in a way, the eagle isn't really the bad guy or even the most important conflict in this DLC. It is the catalyst that gets Jin to face his inner demons, you know, the guilt that he carries, whether he knows it or not. But Jin having to come to terms with not being able to save his father and with him not being the good guy that he thought he was, that is the crux. While the eagle is an interesting character, like I said earlier, this choice was perfect. It's hard to make me care about a new antagonist that shows up just for DLC. So putting the real focus on Jin beyond this surface level conflict was brilliant. That's what makes this final scene with Jin confronting his dad so powerful. Just when you think he might succumb to the eagle's poison, he has this cosmic moment where in a split second, he gets the chance to talk to his dad one last time. And the memory of him asks Jin to get revenge, when we know it's probably the poison talking. Just when I thought he might turn around and kill Tenzo, he stands his ground again. Finally, he resolves that inner conflict. He comes to a peace within himself. He knows that his dad's death couldn't be his fault. It wasn't his fault, and he knows his father made serious mistakes, and he ultimately ends up forgiving his father and Tenzo. Just big gamer tears moment right here, guys. Big gamer tears. Outside of the immense story value I got from this, the eagle boss fight is absolutely everything I want out of a final boss. Unique abilities that put me on my toes. I mean, when she flicked up and like slammed me with her spear the first time, I gasped. The way she switches stances, like a lot of the enemies that I faced, and how she throws kunai at me. She's just got an incredible move set that looks great, and set against this background was just epic in all the right ways. You know that feeling when you crush a final boss and you're like, oh, that was it? That felt underwhelming. My ideal boss fight is where I struggle a little bit. I want to lose a couple times so I know that I earned it, and that's what happened here. The eagle got me with some genuinely tricky timing, and I ended up beating her after a handful of times, but yeah, it ended up feeling perfect. So yeah, Director's Cut is just incredible content. If you skip to here because of spoilers, here's some no spoilers final thoughts. This is unforgettable DLC to me. It highlights the very best parts of Ghost of Tsushima, and then it ratchets those up a few more notches and blows your mind from start to finish. Around every corner, there's something incredible to see. Every smokestack in the distance takes you on a little journey. Every Mongol camp is an opportunity to absolutely destroy your enemy with stealth, or take them head on in the ultimate samurai fantasy video game. It's just so damn good, and I loved every second of it. This is probably weird to hear from me because I've only ever made one video for Ghost on YouTube, but I really do love this video game. It was my game of the year for 2020, and more than a year later, this DLC not only confirms what I already felt, but elevates it further. This is genuinely great. So hats off to Sucker Punch for delivering a generational open world video game and an incredible piece of DLC that I'm so happy I got to play. And that's about it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. This was another video I wish I was able to get out earlier, but you know, real life happens, so I just want to thank you guys for your patience. If you enjoyed this one, please take a second to hit like. That actually does help me out. And also, if you're not already subbed to the channel, you can subscribe so you don't miss my next one. You can also hit the bell to, I don't know, maybe get notified when I upload a new video. It's always a gamble. So really the best way to know is to follow me on Twitter or to join our community Discord server. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you next time.